Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Adventure Seeker Sarah Show. If you were with us last week, we went on a little adventure where we went out and played a board game. We played Sneaky Cards, and I really enjoyed that. So I think I'm going to take you on another adventure today with our special guest, nature. So if you know anything about me, if you've been watching my travels at all, you know that nature is a very important part of that for me and for our family. That's a lot of how our learning happens, is going out into the world and immersing ourselves in nature. So first, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we sort of weave nature education into our travels and why that's important to us, how you can do the same, and then we're going to go maybe on a little adventure. So we're going to talk about some ways to enjoy nature while you travel. Now, of course, there is a whole industry built around ecotourism, like getting out in the world and seeing and interacting with nature. My recent trip to Costa Rica, that's like a huge amount of their economy is ecotourism, which is why there are so many protected areas in Costa Rica. But it's not just Costa Rica, there's ecotourism everywhere. So of course you can engage with nature that way and just go out and do the things that are already there for you, ready to immerse yourself in nature. And that's an option, and that's great. There are lots of tour companies that specialize in ecotourism. But I'm going to show you some ways that we do that sort of on a budget or in a way that sort of weaves its way into our natural travels. So I'm actually, I like to really get into the things that I get into. So we homeschool, I think most of you know that. And I like to educate myself so I can educate my children better. So I'm actually a National Geographic certified educator and then certified for Project Wild, Flying Wild, Project Wet, and then their little kid version, Getting Little Feet Wet and Growing Up Wild. I'm also an Ontario Master Naturalist. I'm not sure I really deserve that title. But I did take a course and I did do all the work. But I certainly know many, many people who know a lot more about nature in Ontario than I do. And I certainly wouldn't call myself masterful at that, but I do know a lot of things, and it's fun. Well, maybe fun to go out into the forest with me. It really depends on your perspective, because I stop a lot to look at things, to take photos, to observe what's around me. So it's either the worst hike ever or the best hike ever, depending on your perspective. So if you like to get out into the woods and learn things, definitely go hiking with me. If you like to get out into the woods and move fast and not stop and look at things, then I'm not your ideal hiking partner. So all of these certifications that I've done, I sort of take little bits of each of them and weave them into the way we learn while we're outside. And we certainly did that before I had any of these certifications, but it's nice because each of them have like little ideas that you can do with children in nature to help them really learn more and understand the nature around them. So some of the things that we do, though, as a family, our hiking is the low-hanging fruit. That's pretty obvious. We do a lot of hiking, though. And there's actually a 1,000 hours outdoors thing where you can track your hours outdoors spent in a given year, which is a really nice thing to do with your family. Some hiking trails have cool things like this. So this is on the Salt Marsh Trail, entering from the Eastern Passage end, and I'm sure they have the same thing in the Cole Harbor end. So there's a QR code from Earth Adventures where you can go and do like a little activity scavenger hunt style thing throughout the trail. And so it's really nice for me when I find things like this, because it gives us a way to weave in nature study without me actually having to do any extra work, which is kind of fun. So it's nice when we find things like this. And of course, we do a lot of hiking on our own, and it's never too early to take children out hiking. This is going to be pretty kid focused because, I have 5 children and that's important to me. And a lot of our time spent hiking is out with the kids. And this is little tiny Lyndon when he was just a year old, out exploring nature. And that's something that we've always done is, get children interested in nature early. Right? There's lots of fun things to see, lots of exciting things about nature. He was running around pointing at lichens when he was like 10 months old. So kids like to be out in nature, children like to learn. So why not combine the two? And sometimes this is a photo of the girls a little bit off trail. It really depends on where you are and where you're hiking. Sometimes there are protected areas and you're asked not to go off trail. A lot of the provincial or national parks are like that, and that makes sense. You really want to make sure you're respecting the ecosystem. Now, of course, these guys have grown up with nature education, so they know how to, walk within a trail so that they're not damaging anything. They know to watch for dangerous plants. But sometimes the best explorations come from going a little bit off trail in areas where it's appropriate. So hiking, of course, is like the low-hanging fruit in nature education, but there are lots of great learning opportunities. And even a lot of the trails, like Pine Grove Trail in Ottawa, has informational panels all along the trail. They teach you about the history of that trail, but then also about all of the different trees that are growing there. So each type of tree has its own panel, and you could do a whole entire afternoon of nature study just on that trail, which we have done multiple times. And sometimes we take other people's children with us too. Another thing that we've done historically is foraging. Now, obviously, don't do this on your own because you need to know what you're picking and know what you're putting in your mouth. But from the time the girls were very little, we went out with a local herbalist, Amber Westfall, who has the Wild Garden, and learned about wild edible and medicinal plants. Now, we haven't just done that with Amber, but that's how we started. We also, when we travel, sometimes find experts in that area that can also teach us about foraging. This is a photo of the girls at Central Park with Steve Brill, who is, a world famous forager and has several books, has been on TV, and he came out to Central Park with us. And we went foraging through Central Park, which I think might not actually be allowed. So maybe I shouldn't be recording that. But anyways, it was a lot of fun. We learned a lot of things. And it was interesting to see because New York City is not that far away. We're learning a lot of the same plants that we have here. And then there are a few that we hadn't seen. So it's always interesting to get out with different people. But that is a great way to learn botany sort of surreptitiously because you really are looking for the patterns in the plants to know what's safe and what's not. You need to really be able to accurately identify to be able to, put something in your salad. So that's a great way to kind of undercover teach botany. And often we'll do things like this where, especially in the spring, we'd basically just stop paying for greens because we send the children out with a bowl and make yard salad. They know what in our area we're able to eat and are very confident about that, which has, had some very interesting moments when they're trying to tell other adults, like, hey, why don't you try this? And sometimes the adults go, oh, you're wrong, which they're not. And sometimes the adults go, yeah, random child telling me to eat a thing, I'll do that. And both of those are interesting for their own reasons. But foraging has been a great experience for us. But make sure that you find an expert in your area. And there are foraging experts everywhere. So find someone who knows what they're talking about and go out and learn some stuff. It's great. But also kind of related to that and learning botany, there's this really great botany scavenger hunt online. And if you want a copy of it, just message me. I'll try to remember to post a link to it on Facebook, but if I don't and you would like to see this, and even I keep saying for kids, these are all fun things for adults too, by the way. So you don't have to have kids to enjoy these things. But the botany scavenger hunt is really cool because it teaches you all about the different leaf shapes and the margins, and you're looking for different types of things that you would be looking for if you were IDing plants. So it's kind of a nice way to intro that and to show kids like what sorts of things you're looking for. Does this have a toothed margin? That's something that you might be looking for when identifying certain types of plants. And we've used this botany scavenger hunt or similar ones, several times over the years. We loop back around to it every couple of years, so we're refreshing, which is kind of fun. And again, never too young to learn about plants. So this is Linden at, literally maybe a month or two old, but letting little kids touch plants, feel plants, as long as you know that they're safe, is a great way to start getting them interested. We have a million photos like this of him just out enjoying nature, which is pretty awesome. And of course, learning from experts. I kind of talked a little bit about that with the foraging, but there are so many ways to do that, and you can do it everywhere you go. Obviously, there are experts within your own city, and there's lots of great benefits to getting out and exploring your own space. There's always something new you're going to learn. I'm sure no matter what town or city you live in, you haven't seen everything that's there. So definitely go do that. But also, as you travel, you can find experts in the areas that you're in. That's what we did with Steve Brill. We knew we were going to New York. I reached out to him and asked if he'd do a workshop for us. So learning from experts is great and important in things like this, where we were mushroom hunting. That's a gigantic puffball mushroom that the girls have. So we went out with mushroom hunters, experienced mushroom hunters here in Ontario, a couple of different people over the span of a few months, so that the girls could learn a little bit more about mushrooms. They already knew a lot about plants, but none of us really knew anything about how to accurately identify mushrooms. Now, I'm still not super comfortable picking mushrooms and then eating them. There are a few that I'm really confident with, and I know that there are no poisonous lookalikes, but it's still fun to have this knowledge, right? But that's not the only place you can learn from experts. Like, this is a photo of one of the girls with Peggy Kokanoff. She's an author that lives in Nova Scotia. We came across her books while we were at Peggy's Cove. They were selling there, and I wish I actually had one of them with me. I should have brought it, but she has these beautiful nature books that are illustrated with her own watercolors. So the illustrations are gorgeous. But what I really love about these nature books is that they don't talk down to children at all. That's something I find in children's books from time to time, is that they're dumbing down the information, but she does not do that at all. And the kids loved her books so much that several years ago I reached out to her and asked if we could come visit on one of our trips to Nova Scotia. So not only was she lovely and accommodating, she had all of these excellent nature artifacts ready to show the kids, because she was used to going into classrooms or libraries to give presentations. So it was a really cool experience. But again, if I hadn't looked for that expert and reached out, that wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't have had that experience. So never be afraid to ask, as long as you're willing to accept no for an answer. And that's sort of how I get through a lot of life and travel, is not being afraid to just ask. And it's okay if someone says no, but they can't say yes unless you reach out, right? Now, another great thing that you can do is free tours. Almost every city has free tours. This is us at Hogsback Park, part of the Ottawa Geoheritage Tour. So if you're in Ottawa, that's a really cool free tour you can do. You can download all of the information online, you can bring it with you on your phone, or you can print it out, and you go to all of these different stops throughout the Ottawa area, learning about the geoheritage of Ottawa, which is pretty cool, and it's all free. They have a couple of them, actually. They have one that focuses on the different stones that are in buildings in downtown. But there are also all kinds of free walking tours. If you just look online for free walking tour wherever, you're going to find something. Even Port Hope has a free walking tour that we've done. So there are a whole bunch of different things that you can find in almost every city. And leveraging those free tours is a great way to learn about the area that you're in, whether it's your home base, like the Ottawa Geoheritage Tour for us, or whether you're on the road somewhere and want to learn a little bit more about the area that you're in. You can almost always find some sort of free tour. And then, of course, animal observation. This is a photo of a cicada just doing its molt. So we are, when I say we, I mean largely me, but also the kids are often looking up close at critters. And this was a really fun one because we'd never seen that before. But also we've gone log flipping. The girls have a video on YouTube about that, where it's a very gentle, just moving of a log, looking for what creatures are underneath, very gently replacing it. But it's a way to sort of connect with the creepy crawlies in nature that kids wouldn't normally be accessing or might be a little bit afraid of. Like, my kids are perfectly happy to let a millipede crawl on them while they learn about that. So it's a nice way to connect, is by observing the animals in nature. Like, that's why people have bird feeders, right? So you want to look at all those pretty, and sometimes not so pretty, but still really cool creatures in nature. So we do that also by bringing field guides with us, so that we can look up what we're seeing. Sometimes we'll come across an insect or a bird that we've never seen before. Another fun way to do this is, if you're out birding and you're hearing bird calls, there's a really cool app called BirdNet, and I call it Bird Shazam. If you're familiar with the app that you hold it up to a song and it tells you what song you're listening to. Well, BirdNet is like that, but for birds. So you can go into the woods, you can record a bird song, and then it will tell you with pretty awesome accuracy what it is you're listening to. So that's kind of a cool thing. So that's really great if you can see the bird but don't know what it is, but can record its song. Then you know how to identify that bird suddenly. So there are quite a few really neat apps for that. Another great nature app that's great for observing animals, but also it's good for plant information. Basically anything that is or ever was alive is iNaturalist. So you can go out and collect data. You can record everything you see, photos, descriptions. It takes in the data for where it was found, and then scientists can actually use that information. So that's kind of a cool citizen science project that also weaves in some animal observation. And then, of course, we travel a lot. We're a traveling family. We've homeschooled from the very beginning and have done a lot of our learning on the go. So this is a photo of one of the girls in a mining area because we went to Bancroft and went and learned about all of the minerals that you can find there. We went out with a geologist, again, learning from an expert. You can go on your own, but we got a lot more out of it, I think, because we took someone with us who knew what they were talking about. We did go again another time alone, but having had that base knowledge from the geologist was very helpful. So that's another thing that we do is we'll look for activities that we can do. We've also gone to, similar to this, we've gone to Herkimer and dug for Herkimer diamonds, which is actually just like a fancy name for a special kind of petroleum quartz. But it's really cool, right? You're getting out and learning about these things in a way that you'll actually remember. So I like to use this as an example when I'm talking about our homeschooling. You know, we could learn just from a workbook, and the kids will know the rock cycle and what certain things look like by just looking at it in a book. But I think long term, the things that I remember personally anyways are when we went out on field trips, you know, went to the museum, did a hands-on science experiment. Those experiential learning things are what sticks. So that's why I like to learn on the go when we're traveling. So there's often, when you're out and about, like in this case, this was at the Barrel Pit, and they have a lot of informational panels that will help you along your way in your learning. So you don't always need a guide, but I find it's helpful. But even so, using informational panels is great. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love my interpretive panels. So, so that's something to watch for. But then also, if we know we're going out to do an activity, we bring our own materials. Like in this case, we had a couple of our rock and mineral guides so that we could sort of learn some things as we're driving. We do a lot of car schooling as well. And then use this as, you know, a practical field guide while we're out on the go. We have little field guides that we take most places with us, to be honest, on a variety of different topics. So the other thing that I find very interesting that not everyone knows about is, and probably one of my favorite things to do with kids while traveling, I wish they'd just give us badges, and maybe they would if we asked. But most of the provincial parks and the national parks, both here and in the United States, and probably in other places as well, have either badges or tags or some sort of thing that you can do to show that you learned things while you were there. So the national parks in Canada have their Explorer program, and you get like sort of a little dog tag that says the name of the park. So you can collect those. We have quite a few of those. Some of the provincial parks also have their own little system where they have like a booklet that you can go through and look at different things at different stops. And a lot of them have their own embroidered patches that you can get at their gift shops. And then the national park system in the United States has like a phenomenal badge system. Some of those, though, you could even get online and download the booklets, do the work, and then send them back in and get your badge returned. So that's kind of, you know, a cool hack. But each of the national parks and historic sites and all of these places all have their own individual badges that you can get. So typically it's completing a portion of a booklet and then taking it into a ranger to get signed, and you get your little badge and certificate, which is kind of cool. So that is definitely something I would recommend. And even some of the smaller like municipalities will have badges. So just ask. And often asking if they have anything that they use for school groups is a great way to get some educational material and go out and do a cool thing. And then sometimes you get a badge or certificate out of it too. And we all know I love my certificates and badges. And then, of course, the main thing that I do personally when I'm out in the woods or literally anywhere is taking close-up like macro photos of nature. Now this is a photo of lichen, and we all know that I really love lichen. We actually have an interesting museum exhibit thing coming up that will use some of my lichen photos, but we'll talk about that another day. But this is one of my favorite things to do, is just go out into the woods. I try to even get out, like, you know, there's a tiny little forest right down the road, so I try to get out and spend some time in the woods, even if it's 10 or 15 minutes, almost every day, just so I'm connecting with nature a bit. And the little patch of forest down the road is what actually made me believe in place-based learning. Now, place-based learning involves going back to the same place over and over, which doesn't sound like something Sarah would do, right? I want to go see all the things, not see the same thing over and over. But last year doing this, going to the same place over and over, convinced me that place-based learning is a great idea, because every single day that I went to the same space, I noticed something new. Sometimes it was something that was already there and I just missed it. Sometimes it's something new that's sprouting or growing. Nature is ever changing. So it was very interesting, actually, to go to the same place over and over. Now, still get out and explore more places, but you can do close-up photography anywhere and find some really interesting things. This is like a jelly fungus that I found once ever. So having your camera on hand is always a great idea. And kids love taking photos too. So if you're traveling with children, don't be afraid to give them a camera to do the same. And sometimes the children get better photos of things than I do because they have a different perspective on things. And this isn't just you need a big forest to go into to have fun doing this. Anytime we stop for gas and I can see a couple of plants in the distance, I've been waiting for my food at a food truck and wandered off into the field, and I'll be taking close-up photos of insects or spiders or plants, and there's a lot of interesting things around you. You just have to be willing to stop to look. So I am going to take us out on an adventure to the forest now. I haven't had my nature time today, so I think I'm going to do my best to take you on an adventure, because it's time for an adventure. Now I'm going to join from my phone, so let's see how that goes. Hello. All right, let's go on an adventure. Now, it won't be a long adventure. I don't have a ton of time to go into the forest, but like I said, I tend to only go for, 10 or 15 minutes anyways, usually. So let's do that. I bet you know what I'm taking you to see. Lichens! No, but also lots of other things. So let's go for an adventure. Now, some of the things that I look for when I go out into the woods or anywhere, plants, but also if you look really close, you'll find lots of tiny little critters. Like, I'm not just looking at bugs that I can see, with the naked eye. I'm getting in really close, taking my macro lens on my phone. Honestly, that's why I have this specific phone. It's literally just for the macro lens. But look, this is very exciting. Right now, all of the lilies in our yard are starting to come up. So it is plant time. It's the season. The day before yesterday, I was down walking in the woods, and you can actually start to see all of the green coming out on the plants. So this is one of my favorite. Oh, I'm back. I was bopping between my phone trying to pick up from my Wi-Fi and going to data. But anyways, what I was saying, in case it cut out just then, is the reason I like spring so much. And I didn't used to, because it's cold still, and that's not great. But it's also the time when everything comes back to life. And because I love seeing all these plants and all these creatures, it's nice to see everything coming back here or sprouting again. So that's why I go out into the woods to look for things and to take photos. So we're almost there. You can see it's like maybe a 2-minute walk to get to the woods down the road from me. See? Yeah, we're close. We're close. And I think what we're going to do today is just take a little walk through the woods. And I don't think my macro lens works great on video, but I will kind of give you an idea of what I normally look for when I'm out on one of my little mini nature photo safaris. So the first thing I look for is interesting patterns or textures in nature that I can take photos of. So I'm not going to be taking photos right now because I'm busy talking to you, but this tree is a great example of where I might isolate sections of it and take photos, because look at the patterns and textures in this tree, and you don't even think about that unless you're deliberately out here looking for that, right? There's so much going on just in that one little tree. Also, it's that time of year, like I said, things are starting to get green, and that's very, very exciting. I actually, a few years ago, I concussed myself at the beginning of April. And one of the things that you really can't do when you have a concussion is do things that would cause like an abundance of emotion, right? So after a couple weeks of not really being able to do much, I had post-concussion syndrome for a while. We started to go for walks, and it was around this time of year when the trees are starting to leaf out and the flowers are popping up, and I was getting so excited about everything in nature that it was actually giving me a headache. So we have a running joke now every time I see plants that, you know, I can't get too excited. There's more. This is, I believe, a currant bush starting to get its leaves. So that's very exciting. Now, one of the other things, of course, we know all about the lichens, but one of the other things that I like to take a close look at is fungus. So I don't know how well we can see that on this camera, but if you get really up close, my suggestion would be go and look at, I guess on A Canada Travel, I have a lot of my nature photos. So if you go look at my albums there, you'll see some of these things that I'm showing you, but in a more interesting and artistic way, I guess is what I'm getting at here. So this is really cool. Down here, if you see off in the distance, there's, you know, some little structures. The preschool actually that runs under the church down the road has a little forest school in here. So I really wish that every school could incorporate nature education more, but you know, maybe someday. I think it's important. Oh, there goes a little squirrel. So, oh, you can hear the birds. I could use my bird Shazam. So this is my favorite place. There's like a little clearing here. As you can see, like there are houses around. It's not deep into nature or anything, but it's a nice place to come and explore. And you know, I like it because there's lots of lichens here, but it's also generally pretty quiet. Especially I come early in the morning. There's sometimes I'll come down here and see 15 different species of bird. There's, especially during the spring, there are a lot of different types of fungus growing. Like you can find just about anything here, and most importantly, lots of lichen. So when I first started taking photos of lichen regularly, this was one of my main go-to places. So I think what I'd like you to do is, in the comments when you have a chance, I want you to tell me what makes you happy. What makes me happy is going out and exploring nature, and I do that while I travel. It's a huge part of my adventures. Part of the reason why I say adventure is everywhere, because I have just as good a time, you know, out taking photos in a parking lot as I do up parasailing over the beach in Costa Rica, right? Like, their adventure is everywhere. The small things are just as exciting as the big things to me. So what makes you happy when you travel? What makes you excited? Oh, look, another fun thing. So this is like from the boring insects that make these paths. And that also is a fun thing to take photos of, which I do all the time. But yes, let me know in the comments, what makes you happy when you travel? Is it connecting with other people? Is it going out and taking photos? Is it finding new foods? What makes you excited when you travel? Because I like to travel and I like the things that I'm excited about, but you know what else excites me? Is seeing other people excited. So you tell me what excites you, and I will do my best to also weave that into the show, because everything excites me. So if I can also add in something that makes other people happy, even better. So we're gonna sign off for today. You've seen my happy forest spot, and maybe we'll do another nature adventure another time, and it will be more exciting than this one, because I'll bring, you know, 2 phones and show you some really cool things close up on the macro lens. But for now, don't forget to go follow Adventure Seeker Sarah on everywhere. I'm on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and go find me on A Canada Travel. Make sure to also follow A Canada Travel, because there are lots of other adventure seekers there doing lots of cool things. So make sure to go join A Canada Travel and follow the adventure seekers and everyone else who's there. Hop on over and give Connect TV a like. If you like beer, at beerthing.ca, you definitely want to keep watch there, because there are some exciting things coming. If you're into Nova Scotia, Nova Scotia Buzz is the place to be. And if you like spooky things, go follow Class A Paranormal. So very nice to see you all. And until next week, happy adventuring. And don't forget to go enjoy the outdoors.